Hi class, welcome to Module 8. We're going to examine how does gender matter and how we think about our bodies. But this chapter really goes into a great deal more than that. It not only talks about our bodies, but some of the medical issues and the medicalization of women in the process and how that even disadvantages men in how we explore things. As promised, I'm recording these about 4 weeks ahead of time so that those who are working ahead can get to the modules and attack everything but the comments on the discussion board. And in doing that, I've just been reviewing your comments on theory. I think you'll find that those theories that you talked about in Module 3 are going to be popping up throughout this chapter as they do in the other, but especially start thinking about how that original thought about which theory made more sense to you, how it ties to our body. So much of the information in this chapter will not be a surprise to you. The myths of beauty and what our bodies should look like is found in societal images everywhere. In ads, we've seen the popular campaign by Dove to try to break that as far as women's bodies and to make people realize that bodies can be different and still be okay. I think back to when my oldest daughter was in 2nd grade, and she was really a top student. She was in swimming and gymnastics. She played the piano, blonde and thin. She was average height, and one day she stood in front of the full length mirror and was hitting herself, going fat, fat, fat. There was no fat on her. In fact, she was well beneath the average body weight for a child her size. It was amazing, the influence that was coming at her in 2nd grade of what a girl's image, what a body should be like. I clearly have not forgotten this, and I watched her pain with it as she adjusted to it. Now, today, she's a 43-year-old woman who still has almost no fat on her, and those things have changed in her life. But the body image keeps coming at us regularly. What's interesting is even as we explore this topic, it's changing. And it's not always changing for the better as we start looking at it, because men are more aware of their bodies today, and we face some real masculine issues as well as with body image. So important things to consider as we move forward to look at a few brief things within this chapter. Even as I touch on the PowerPoint and the issues, I don't nearly cover the subject, and I think that's why you will find in this particular module, not only do you have some quick videos that I'll come back to later, but I allow you to choose your question entirely for what you would do related to your module assessment. So let's move to the PowerPoint. One of your videos will address the history of the body and what body image was to be like, and how it affects in that really early view of what beauty was and how it's changed over time. I think that's important that you consider that mind-body dualism is part of the process, that there is this mind of masculine, this rational and superior, the body feminine and inferior for women, and the views that come into place. So early feminists on beauty argue that the body was used to maintain a power imbalance through the ideals of beauty. Because no woman could really reach it, it downplayed women's skills and capabilities. And early feminist ideas, real actions were the right to ignore fashion. They protested the Miss America pageant and even the Miss World pageant, and as we explore those issues, the glorification of beauty, and not the other pieces that go with it. The beauty myth is argued out there uh, as far as this beauty is. I wanted to read this directly, so I apologize for stopping the tape there. But the beauty myth, according to Wolf, is the belief in a quality called beauty that is real and universal, that women, as a result of biological, sexual, and evolutionary factors, should want to embody, why men should desire the women who embody this ideal beauty. So there's this perfect peace out there, and we should work towards it and admit that's what men should desire, that should be that real peace that comes into place. Now, Wolf argument does not accept that the beauty myth is real or universal, that different cultures and different backgrounds have different choices. In fact, our book does a really good job at pointing out some of those differences that occur within culture. Yet media drives that into place, that we can start seeing these standard myths generated of how people should look and how people should be formed, and that this is more powerful than other pieces, especially for women. However, as I said in the earlier, we have to relate this also to the changing look at beauty for men, which is touched on later in the chapter. The beauty myth contributes to male dominance as we see it forward, and we are bombarded by images of beauty in the media. Now, within this module, you're going to go back and you're going to look at Jean Kilbourne's. Now, if you recall in the first video in class, the one that had 3 different pieces, you have seen Jean Kilbourne before. Jean Kilbourne came to campus 2 years ago and gave a talk on campus, 600 people in Stedman to hear her and her work on body image and the issues that have come forward within the process of exploring those things. As she talks, you can see that women become more dissatisfied with their body because we're more exposed to this image that we're supposed to have, and achieving the ideal really becomes impossible. So as we explore that, we can see how this affects individual. In my early statement on the module, I talk about the looking glass self, how we perceive ourselves and what should be there as we look at the work of Cooley, as he talks about that our eye image is how does the media perceive me when I come back and I fail to make that picture as I'm looking through your eyes or what I think is in your eyes. So the problem with bodies takes a toll on women. 84% of women diet. 20% of college students will starve themselves to lose weight. We see this abnormal behavior and body issues. There's a use of excessive makeup. We are well marketed to this beauty products, for hair products, for facial projects. So we can see the increase of cosmetic surgery. And this is really interesting as we try to establish this perfect body and all the different processes of cosmetic surgery. So we may not do liposuctions and breast augmentations, but we may have moved to the freezing to get away with the body fat that would normally be there to protect certain areas, or we just can't lose it through exercise. We see this push to this ideal piece fitting, and in fact even the fashions tied to body are very clear, so that if you're overweight, um, you can see that this fashions won't be as desirable, or people of large figures should not wear colors, and we have this fight back and forth of what's is in there. In support of beauty, um, women should not have to sacrifice for gender equality and this drive. Though we know when we do research that women that are considered beautiful to the time and place of their hiring are more likely to get a job, that body image and uh, the way they look are valued by employers. And so we have this whole look of doing um, that comes into place that makes us practice this beauty to fit into society. Now, I've stated all along, if we look at one gender, sex, we need to look at the other sex. Men and body image, however, also used as markers. In many cultures, men should be taller, men should have certain markings, and our book uses the example of Nazi Germany. The perfect person was blonde, blue-eyed, had these attractive features, and would have that power in place. And that where, when we could see that structure, and when it fell apart, especially in the Olympics arrangement, the dissatisfaction of not having the perfect body image in place, but that people are considered more desirable, more attractive, more socially they're desirable personality traits tied to their look. So height, men are considered especially important for power. The taller have more advantages. We can see the theory coming of doing gender here, and that heterosexual couples act on it with this gender dominance comes into place. And we can see that was different than in previous centuries, and it changes as our culture. Now, there is significant differences here as we see this masculinity. For men, is embodied agents and objects coming into place, and this ideal body image and muscular may actually have some difficulty in getting into place. We see some risky behavior here, that boys at young ages will be working out to be muscle building when they're not even grown enough to have those ideal forms and into place. And they monitor themselves for flubber, for that weight, and that process. So traditionally, men are masculinity is dangerous to men's health. We know that once men marry, their health actually improves, but men alone have higher mortality rates than women. They die at younger ages. They're more likely to be injured, performing dangerous work, and risk-taking behavior, not using safety precautions, or putting themselves in dangerous situations or in dangerous roles. And we can see that in place as we look at the issues of football today, and the high rate of concussion, and the result being some significant health effects in aging, and some dementia coming into place. But there's rules of manhood, aren't there? How we behave, buck it up, boys don't cry, none of the sissy stuff. And this has really been powerful in this last century as we start to look at the changes that have occurred to men. And this whole breadwinner role puts this power, and it can be dangerous to put all that stress onto man. So we have some significant issues as we look at class and race and the masculinity intersecting. And so immigrant men work in the most dangerous occupations. I think of a family that we supported that came from Vietnam, And as they were here in the country, he took the most dangerous jobs with filling gas cylinders and living in, because it would give those higher salaries and they could protect themselves. We have this history of Hispanic immigrants working in slaughterhouses and the high risk of illness and injury and loss of limb in this. And we discriminate. There's discriminatory effect. Black men are often in very dangerous positions, not only in their jobs, but in their lives. And they also receive less health care and die at younger ages. Only the American Indian males die at younger ages than Black men in our country. So some significant health risks. And as we talk about health related to the body, we talk about women and how they've been medicalized. Your book goes into the issue of gender being part of that practice and how women are thrown out of that medical piece because men could bring it into this quantifiable measure of health that is paid for. And we can see the push in the field, and medicine became primarily a field for upper class white men, and pushed women healers out of that practice and that holistic. And we're fighting to bring that back as the counter changes. Also, the medicalization of women ties around the whole process of being a woman. And so the issues of coming into your menses have now become a marker for medical issues and when we need to move forward. And part of that protects a woman through the fact that she may have a pap test annually to protect herself at a better level, to protect herself from uterine cancer, and to look at cervical cancer. But we also see some significant issues that come into place, that a woman is judged for being PMS, or the issues of menopause, and that women were considered menopausal and therefore they couldn't rule in a country or follow through. And yet we know that menopause issues only affect about 20 to 25% of women. And yet the treatment was to treat everyone for a period of time. So some significant issues come into place. This chapter also talks about eugenics and the whole idea of picking out the perfect population. Now, eugenics is more than just how does it affect what we think about our bodies, but eugenics talks about only the best should breed. So the smartest and the best looking as we move through. And then we see this whole idea of what our bodies should be coming like and why the difference of men and women. So as you explore this, think about who's male and who's female, what is attributed to those things, what is biological and what is social put into place. Girls are less likely to be taught how to throw when we're talking about throwing it as a girl. Today, more and more girls are involved in a softball team, or following up on even being able to be part of a baseball team. But what we're taught, men are less likely to be taught how to sew, and yet both are valuable skills, aren't they? And what we do, and that our bodies serve as this important site of living, of learning what is part of our gender, but it's also part of living our gender that is forced on us or become things that we want to do as we proceed forward. So, sorry about that. As you finish exploring this particular issue, look at these videos. They're very quick. but what Barbie would really look like. The most popular doll in the United States has been Barbie for years. And what she would really look like if we were anatomically correct. I mentioned throughout this, and you will see the work of Jean Kilbourne, the way the ads portray, and then just thinking about the difference between men and women as far as how we look at those terms, how we expect people to look. And I love this video about men's standards of beauty around the world, and just what the ideal body type is for women throughout history. I think it will be a surprise to you. And finally, we'll finish with Lacey Green about the whole process of body shaming, of that fat shaming, of what is there and what's expected. With that, your discussion board, no surprise to you, will be easily focused on this issue. How do you see beauty? Do you think there's a relationship between beauty and power? Why or why not? And does beauty or perception of beauty have stronger power on one gender type than the other? As you explore those videos, I think you'll see there is some big differences that occur, but perhaps not as big as they once were. Your thoughts are greatly appreciated, and your discussion boards have been so good. And finally, as I mentioned earlier, you can pick from any gender exercise for this particular chapter for your weekly assessment of your knowledge. And for some of you, you're probably at the point that you're thinking, I'm going to step back from one because I know that I'll still get 10 completed. Don't forget, it's only the top 10 grades that count. And if you do more than 10, the lower grades will drop. With that said, I hope you have a wonderful week. Let me know if you have questions. You should be moving forward on your project and had your project approved by now. Let me know how I can help. Have a great week.